lesson we're going to look at how to describe Ielts tables. Okay, we'll look at the language for tables. Now some tables might be over time, but some may not be, so this affects the language you can use. So for example, if we look at this first table, this has a time frame from 1990 to 2005. So you might say, for example, in 1990 Africa had 749 million hectares of forest. However, in 2005 this had fallen to 691. But we can also use the language of comparing and contrasting. So for example, South America had the largest forest area at 946 million hectares. However, this next table is not over time, so you can see there's no time frame. So all you can do with this graph, you can't use a language of change, but you can obviously compare and contrast things using, for example, superlative adjectives. So for example, Bangladesh had the lowest GNP per head, while the USA had the highest. So when you're analysing tables, there are certain things you should do, as with all graphs and charts. You shouldn't describe every single piece of data presented, just to present the main points of each feature. You might not be able to describe everything anyway, because there might be too much there. However, you should make sure you mention each feature. So for example, if there are 4 countries, you should mention all 4 of them, even if you say very little about one, because there's not much information. Look for important data. So for example, look for things like the highest and the lowest, particularly the highest, because these might be important things to describe. Also, you must try and group the data. This might require you to use some general knowledge about the world, such as recognizing developed and developing countries, because you might want to group the data according to some of the features that are there on the table. So let's look at some key questions you need to ask yourself when you answer our Ielts Task 1, for example, a table. So here we have the prompt. So the following table gives statistics about the aspects of quality of life in 5 countries. So it's this table we're looking at. So what is the table measuring? So this is looking at the quality of life in 5 countries. So you can get information from the prompt, but you also want to look at the table as well to see what else is there. So obviously it's looking at GNP, calorie supply per head, daily calorie supply, life expectancy, infant mortality. So you need to carefully analyse the prompt and the table to see what you're actually going to be looking at. So what type of language do you need to use? Change, comparing and contrasting. So we looked at this already. This is the second table and there is nothing over time, so you can't use language of change. So you'll just be comparing and contrasting things, using things such as adjectives or while, however. What tense would you use? We'll look for dates. You can see this is in 1982, so you'll be using past tenses. Usually mostly the past simple, because you're talking about completed actions in the past. Which country has the best quality of life and which has the worst? So in this case you can see Bangladesh has only 140 US dollars per head. USA, however, is much higher at 13,160. If we look at the other indicators, you can see Bangladesh is much worse. USA is by far the highest. So look for these kind of things. And you can see if we look at Bolivia, Egypt and Indonesia, they're kind of in the middle and they're a bit more similar to each other. So these are kind of things you want to look out for when you analyse your table. So you can start to spot sort of different patterns. So what information could you use for an overview or conclusion? Because remember, every task 1 needs to have an overview. So there's several probably choices you could have, but for this one the possibility is to look at the USA. You can see that's much better quality of life than the other countries. So this could be something you could point out as an overview.